What makes a good or bad podcast? Find out from William Luckett and Kevin P. Henry.
One of the best ways to produce a great podcast, right? What creates an effective podcast is just being authentic, right? I feel like that's part of it. I've had the opportunity to produce my own podcast, the Will Luckett podcast, give myself a shout out. But I feel like when it comes to podcasting, it's actually a pretty simple medium, right? You need something to record, you need a place to record, and then you need some place to post your content. So I would say finding whatever works best for you, right? I've been working with GarageBand. A lot of people wouldn't lean on GarageBand super tough, but for a beginner, for a very simple format, I mean, it works. It's super easy to edit. It's super easy to make adjustments to things. So podcasting is awesome. And my whole thing with podcasting is that it allows you to be a fly on the wall almost anywhere in the world, right? There's conversations going on all over the place, podcasts in Australia and Asia, South America, and you can really tap into different cultures, different ideas, different perspectives. And I think that's just amazing.
Yeah, podcasting is something that connects people. And I know that especially during COVID, when everybody or just about everybody was locked down, I mean, I wound up working from, I had a really nice office I never saw because it was from that period of time, 2020 to 2022. I think I saw my office 5 times in a 2-year period. But the plus side of it was that it forced me to get on the internet, and I've connected with so many different people all over the country, all over the world, really, and wound up interviewing people in different states and different countries who could really teach me as well as my audience about topics that we were all unfamiliar with. So the podcasting format as well allows yourself to be more traditional kind of radio talk show format, like you and I talking here. But also I've heard people do monologues. I've heard people do, comparing something to almost like a radio drama, complete with sound effects. You can go out, and I really encourage people to do this, is use even your iPhone or whatever and go get audio out in public. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been at a community event or at a meeting and run into somebody, had this great conversation that was very enlightening and moving and informative. And I went, wow, I wish I had recorded that. So my point being that you don't have to wait till, I've got to wait till I go to my studio and book my guests. And sometimes the guest is the person standing in line in front of you at the supermarket. How many times have you been in a Zoom meeting and I'm going, oh man, didn't somebody just record what William just said for the last 5 minutes? Because you can repurpose that. You can send it, like sometimes I've sent my podcast interviews to a local radio station, KBCS FM 91.3. And I've also used it as a training tool. Like if I'm talking about microaggressions, what are microaggressions? Well, here's a 10-minute interview I did with a professor or a social worker or somebody who can talk about that. The other thing, lastly, that you can do is you can take those MP3s or MP4s and put them into, I use Otter AI, and you dump it in there and it just transcribes the whole thing. And it's usually about 90% effective. It's not going to get everything, right? But you can use that and you can put that in newsletters. You can send it out as articles. You could even create Q&A written formats, because I do find that people are hungry for content. Now, what I did want to talk about, though, as well, is, how could I say it? As a host of a podcast, what are some of your beliefs about what makes a good host? And before you launch into that, I just want to say, I know what doesn't make a good host. And I'm not going to call this person's name out because they're basically a celebrity talk show host. But I had to turn off an interview that was being done with another celebrity because this interviewer just would not shut up. I mean, he would ask and this was a very interesting guest, by the way. It was a recording artist who's been around like for 30 years. So the person could have just talked for 3 hours. It would have been interesting. But he would ask the guest a question. And a lot of times people will pause, they'll say, well, yeah, I really felt like my last album was this. And then there's a pause, and you allow that space for the guest to continue. And you even can encourage them. So William, okay, you said your last poem was your best poem. Why is that? And leave it at that. But instead, the host would then launch into a 2-minute description of what they thought was meant by the statement or about their own experience. And I said, the guest is the star. You're there to facilitate the conversation. And of course, you're going to throw in your own 2 cents. It should be like a 75 or 80% guest and 20% you or a host. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And for me, it just comes down to principles, right? And one of my principles is listening first, right? Being an active listener. So as a host, right, when you have your interviewee on the show, right, you've prepared the show notes, you have a script, this, that, and the other. But I really think, like you said, the interviewee is the star of the show. You come with your ideas, you let them kind of navigate the rabbit hole that you both go off into. So I think, the personality and the intent behind the mic matter more than like fancy equipment, right? I feel like the content should reflect curiosity, some experimentation, and connection with listeners, as opposed to some unorganized conversation.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I was thinking is that what's a good idea. I like, some people call it the pre-interview. Well, you've got to pre-interview this person. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I'll send them an outline, or I'll maybe have a brief conversation for 15, 20 minutes. And I'm saying, okay, we're going to have William Luckett on the podcast. So, hey, William, like I sent you an outline. So these are the bullet points I want to talk about. And I know you already. So I kind of know the way you communicate. So that makes me feel more comfortable anyway. But I want the podcast, even though it's recorded, to give the feeling or the appearance that this is happening spontaneously and that it's not super rehearsed.
Right.
Because I think sometimes if you overdo the pre-interview and you're sitting there for 2 or 3 days, okay, when he asks me this question, I'm going to answer it this way. And unfortunately, it's like one time I did an interview with a person on the radio, live radio, and she starts reading her news release. Now, we had this great conversation, very casual before, and then the red light goes on, and she grabs her news release. And then I said, well, tell me about the event. She starts reading it verbatim, word for word. So what comes across is this is not sounding authentic. It's sounding like you're reading something. And once you kind of plant that seed of like, well, can't this person talk about what their event without having to read it verbatim? You kind of go, oh, I wonder if this person really even knows what they're talking about. It starts to plant those seeds of doubt. Whereas if somebody ran into you at one of your events and said, hey, I understand you're a spoken word artist. Tell me about that. What's that all about? You wouldn't grab a piece of paper out and say, well,
I'm William Luckett, and today I'm going to tell you all about...
it's not a PowerPoint presentation. So what would you say to that in terms of what makes the best guest? We talk about what makes the best host, but what's a good guest?
Yeah, I guess I got your last question flipped around a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
But okay, so yes, what makes a good host is that, right, they lead with listening, right? They're there to kind of moderate, direct, and guide, but kind of let the river of the conversation flow naturally. But what makes a good guest, I think, is just coming in prepared a little bit, right? Reviewing the outline, coming in with some of your own thoughts, and really doing a mock-up podcast before you even hop on the thing. Right? Read through your answers, practice articulating, things like that. So I think it's best just to be raw, to be organic, be authentic, and bring a little bit of spunk, bring a little bit of flair to the episode. So
now, do you have a website and anything you want to give out if people say, hey, that William Luckett guy is really interesting. I'd like to find out more about what he's about. How should they do that?
Absolutely. So I had the chance to create my website. My website is millenniumfilms.com, and it's called Millennium Films because I've recently got into videography, and that is spelled WILLENNIUM films.com. So you'll see some of my voiceover stuff there. You'll see some of my video productions, things that I've worked on, some original content. So get over there, check me out, and maybe we can collaborate on something.
All right, sounds good.
Special thanks to our guest today, William Luckett. This is All the Way Authentic. I'm your host, Kevin P. Henry.